It is time for 7 on the Streets, the history of Chicago street names.
Our Facebook fans picked some streets with unusual stories behind them, and Roz had a chance to check it out.
This is one of my favorites because I just kept exploring and finding out all these interesting things. So we've got ghosts, politics, and patronage. We'll start with a request from Facebook fan Bill Keating about the origin of Damen Avenue. Damen Avenue was originally known as Roby Street after James Roby, a farmer and real estate developer in the mid-1800s. Father Arnold Damen, a Jesuit priest, founded Holy Family Church, St. Ignatius High School and College, now Loyola University.
In 1871, we know we have the Chicago fire, which actually started just east of Holy Family Parish. At the time, Father Damen was out of town in Brooklyn. So Father Damen prayed for the church to be saved and promised that he would light candles in remembrance of Our Lady of Perpetual Help. The wind shifted and the building was saved.
To this day, the parish keeps 7 candles, albeit electric, near the altar to fulfill Father Damen's promise. There are many tales about Holy Family being haunted, strange happenings around the church, sightings of Father Damen, but the biggest story revolves around 2 of the statues on the altar.
One evening, Father Damen was woken up from a sound sleep by 2 boys knocking on his door. They told him that their mother was very sick and she was dying and she wanted him to come and bless them.
The priest fulfilled the request, letting the tearful woman know it came from her sons.
She started crying even harder because her sons had been deceased for some time.
Not too far from Holy Family is Halsted Street. Mary Scott asked about its origins. It began as First Street, then Dyer Street after abolitionist Charles Dyer.
Halsted Street is named for William and Caleb Halsted, who actually are not Chicagoans at all. As far as we can tell, they visited Chicago once. They were essentially business partners with the first mayor of the city, William Ogden.
William Ogden has his street as well. He served only 1 term as mayor by choice. He did much more in Chicago's early years, designing the first swing bridge over the Chicago River, dug a channel to straighten the north branch of the river, creating Goose Island, and he built Chicago's first railroad, becoming president of the Union Pacific. A native New Yorker, Ogden moved back east in his later years while keeping a residence in Chicago. Now, he was in New York in 1871 when the Great Fire broke out. He returned the next day to find everything he owned in Chicago was lost. Logan Boulevard on Chicago's northwest side originally was part of the town of Jefferson, outside the early city limits. The Logan Square neighborhood was annexed in 1889 and named in honor of John Alexander Logan, a Civil War general. After the war, as a U.S. Senator, he established a holiday to honor his fellow soldiers.
And Decoration Day was essentially a way to remember Civil War veterans and those who died in battle.
Eventually, that became the federal holiday we know as Memorial Day. You might think this statue here in Logan Square is dedicated to General John Logan. Not quite. It's actually the Illinois Centennial Monument. General Logan's statue stands proudly in Grant Park. Facebook fan Bennett Ryan asked about Campbell Avenue, a west side street that runs through 24 miles of the city. James L. Campbell was alderman of the old 12th Ward in the late 1800s.
Like a lot of people after whom streets are named, not only was he a politician, he also was very active in real estate development after the Great Chicago Fire of 1871.
Seeing the city in ruins, Campbell seized the opportunity to purchase land and develop more than 1,000 buildings. He also donated land to the city for parks such as Altgeld Park on the west side. Also on the west side, Troop Street piqued the curiosity of viewer Nafisa Abdullah. Amos Troop was a Chicago businessman and politician in the mid-1800s. He was an abolitionist prior to the Civil War and a supporter of temperance.
Which meant that he wanted to basically do away with the consumption of alcohol and believed that alcohol led to a lot of evils.
Troop ran for mayor twice and lost twice. He eventually moved to California and was elected mayor of Pasadena. His biggest achievement, founding Troop University, which became the California Institute of Technology. And many of Caltech's distinguished faculty and alumni are names you might recognize, like Charles Richter, the Richter scale, Frank Capra, film director, It's a Wonderful Life, and Albert Einstein was a visiting professor there. Originally known as Lincoln Street, Wolcott Avenue runs through about 20 miles of Chicago at 1900 West. It was named after Dr. Alexander Wolcott, Jr., who in 1819 was appointed Indian agent for Chicago, among other things.
He has the distinction of being the first private medical doctor in the city.
He has a connection to the Kinsey family in Chicago by marrying the daughter of John Kinsey in 1823, and this was supposedly the first wedding in the settlement of Chicago.
Cubs fans might know that the street named for him is the street where the Cubs have won their only 2 World Series championships in 1907 and 1908.
Located at Polk and Wolcott Streets, West Side Park closed in 1915. It was replaced by the University of Illinois Hospital and Health Sciences System, expanding to the Illinois Medical District. Robin Spina was curious about Grand Avenue, an angle street that runs about 12 miles in Chicago from Navy Pier to Harlem Avenue. Like most of Chicago's diagonal streets, Grand Avenue was originally a muddy Native American trail, but Grand Avenue wasn't its original name.
Grand Avenue had previously been called Whiskey Point Road. Presumably because there was a settlement in what is now the Belmont-Cragen neighborhood.
City planners plotting the streets decided, well, what do we want to do with something called Whiskey Point Road? And they looked back to Chicago's history, and they were reminded of someone by the name of Thomas Jefferson Vance Owen, who had at one point said, Chicago is a grand place to live.
There is a street named after Owen, 1 block northwest side. Owen was one of the early founders of Chicago and a companion of Daniel Boone. He became Indian agent of Chicago after Dr. Wolcott's death in 1830. It all comes full circle. Owen is also said to have been Chicago's first village president, elected in 1833. Now remember, Chicago wasn't incorporated as a city until 1837.